Hi everyone, thank you for joining Doc's live webinar on Microsoft Power Apps. If you were unable to join part 1 of this webinar, don't worry, we will briefly recap for you. And for those of you who were able to join, we welcome you back. Today's webinar will be conducted by myself, Heather Crouch, and my colleague, Brandon Kittredge. I'll be taking you through a brief introduction about Doc and Power Apps and how these solutions can create seamlessness within your business. And then Brandon will guide you through a live demonstration of Power Apps and show you an expense reporting app that we created at Doc here through using Power Apps as well. So a little bit about Doc first. We are a Microsoft Gold certified partner specializing in SharePoint. We started out working with very large enterprise clients almost 17 years ago, building completely custom SharePoint intranet solutions from the ground up. And we realized that a lot of businesses can't really afford to wait 6 to 10 months to have a solution up and running. So we came up with Doc, which is a pre-built intranet solution that can be deployed within 4 to 6 weeks and still be surprisingly customizable. So at Doc, we use a lot of various resources, to build a collaboration and have that one-stop shop for your team. And one of the things that we use for our expense reporting is Power Apps. So as you can see here, there's a lot of value that a solution like Doc can bring to your business, but 3 of the main value components that a lot of our clients find in Doc are the simplified user experience, the better communication and collaboration company-wide, regardless of department or location, and the overall employee adoption with a solution that can be deployed so quickly. To be able to have that one-stop shop for all your business needs, whether they're on the go or within one of your office locations. So in today's world, businesses are really relying heavily on technology-driven changes and updates to stay competitive within the market. And organizations need the ability to update their products and all of their processes as quickly as possible so that they can stay ahead of the competition. So with the technology-focused modern world of business, the demand for mobile accessible applications is skyrocketing. So businesses really need to access their most important functionalities on the go in order to quickly adapt to the ever-changing style of business today. And so with this being said, the demand for a mobile application has grown 5 times faster than the typical IT department can even deliver. So IT experts need a resource that they can easily update that is seamless for their team members to use. At Doc, we make sure your team has access to the most critical resources on the go through the completely mobile responsiveness of the intranet portal, and we utilize mobile applications such as Power Apps to make sure that all your teams can have everything regardless of where they are. So Microsoft Power Apps really helps your team to build and deploy business applications with ease. So your team can configure an application within a matter of months, weeks, or even days, depending on the functionalities of the app. And Power Apps makes it easy to develop and maintain these applications without even having to write code. So your not so tech savvy team can really come in and create something intuitive and easy to use for all of your employees.
Hey, real quick, just to check, is there anyone able to hear? Okay, I think everyone's stuck in the lobby, so nobody might have heard that.
Oh, I haven't gotten...
I have to admit them.
Okay, so should I start over?
Yes.
Okay.
Two participants are now joining.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for joining
Tony
Doc's
now.
Is now exiting.
live webinar on Microsoft Power Apps. We apologize for the delay. We were having some issues getting people admitted into the meeting, the Microsoft Teams meeting. If you guys were unable to join part 1 of this webinar, don't worry, we will briefly recap for you. And for those of you who were able to join, welcome back. Today's webinar will be conducted by myself, Heather Crouch, and my colleague, Brendan Kittredge. I'll be taking you through a brief introduction about Doc and PowerApps and how these solutions can create seamlessness within your business. And then after that, Brandon will guide you through a live demonstration of PowerApps and show you one of the expense reporting applications that we've created here at Doc using PowerApps. So a little bit about Doc first. We are a Microsoft Gold certified partner specializing in SharePoint, and we've been in business almost 17 years. And we started out working with very large enterprise clients building completely custom SharePoint intranet solutions from the ground up. But we realized that a lot of businesses can't really afford to wait 6 to 10 months to have a solution up and running. So we came up with Doc, which is a pre-built intranet solution that can be deployed within 4 to 6 weeks and still be surprisingly customizable. At Doc, we've used many resources such as PowerApps to build a collaborative tool for all of your employees to be able to access their most used resources on the go. As you can see here, there is a lot of value that a solution like Doc can bring to your business, but 3 of the main value components that a lot of our clients find with Doc is the overall simplified user experience, the better communication and collaboration company-wide due to the mobile accessible, completely mobile responsiveness, and being able to have all of your documents and everything centralized in one location. And the fact that the employee adoption, is a lot better because it only takes 4 to 6 weeks to get something up in place. So in today's world, businesses are relying heavily on technology-driven changes and updates to stay competitive within the market. So organizations need the ability to update their products and processes as quickly as possible to make sure that they are staying ahead of their competition. With the technology-focused modern world of business, the demand for mobile accessible applications is skyrocketing. Businesses need to access their most important functionalities on the go in order to quickly adapt to the ever-changing style of business today. So with this being said, the demand for a mobile application has grown 5 times faster than the typical IT department can even deliver. So IT experts really need a resource that is easy to update and that is seamless for their team members to use. So at Doc, we make sure your team has access to the most critical resources on the go through the completely mobile responsive intranet solution, and then also through mobile applications such as PowerApps via our expense reporting application. Microsoft PowerApps helps your team to build and deploy business applications with ease. Your team can configure an application within a matter of months, weeks, or even days, depending on the functionalities of the app. So PowerApps really makes it easy to develop and maintain these applications without even having to write code. So you're not so tech savvy. Team members can really come in and create something that's intuitive and will help you run that process of the business. So PowerApps connects to other systems that you're currently using to make sure that all of your resources are up to date and secure. As you can see, or it may have just gone away, but there was a picture that showed you some of the different things that PowerApps can connect to, some of the different resources, and one of them is Microsoft Sharepoint. So now that you have a little bit of a background about Doc and the basics of Microsoft PowerApps, it's time for me to turn it over to my colleague, Brandon, and he will walk you through a demonstration of PowerApps. So take it away, Brandon.
Hey everyone. So for my portion of this, I'm going to be showing you how to make a quick and simple app for just filtering data. I've shown a lot of things about getting data into SharePoint. Now I want to show a little bit of something about getting data out of SharePoint and displaying it properly in PowerApps. So that's what I'll do first, and then I will show a preview of our expense reporting app. So first things first, I have a blank app here, and this I'm going to connect to this list. It's just a simple list with some dummy data in it, has some groups and departments, nothing special. And in this app, I'm going to filter that data by group and show you guys how to do that and how to make it change with user input. So first things first, I just like to do this every time. I'll add a little title block. What I'm going to do is go to Insert, Icons, grab a rectangle, And then I'll also grab a label after that and make a nice title for this app. Just call it Filter App. Change the color over here. And under more options down here, you can find all kinds of settings for your text to really get the way you want it to. So I'll change the size, and then I always like to have the font weight as semi-bold. I just think that looks really nice. Second thing, in order to show the data, we need to have the data in our application. I could add a gallery, and I could even add the data from that gallery, but the easiest way to make sure your data is in the application easiest is just go to View, Data Sources, Add Data Source, and then once you're in here, you're going to click New Connection, and I'm using Sharepoint, so I'm going to scroll all the way down to Sharepoint, click on that. This one is for cloud services, this one's on-prem. And then once this loads, I'm going to need to paste the URL that my list is in up to the subsite that it's in. So I'm going to copy that from the URL on my list, and I'm going to go back to my app and paste that in here and click Go. Then it's going to pull up all the lists in that site. I'm using this Webinar 2 list, so I'm going to connect to that. Then I have my data added, and I can use that anywhere in my app. It's nice and simple. So now I want to have somewhere to show that data. If I'm going to have multiple records showing in the app and I'm going to have the user scrolling through those records and looking at them, the best way to do that is to have a gallery. I'm going to just use a blank one for demonstration. And I'll put that down here, make it a little wider. I'm going to give some space for some controls at the top later on. And for the data for this gallery, I'm going to go to this, select Webinar 2, which is the data that I just added. And then I can add things in here and they'll show up as my data. So this, if you click in the gallery, if you click kind of more at the top, you'll find the individual section for the record itself. So I'm going to make this a little smaller and add a label in here. So now there's a label for every record. And if you go in here, you can scroll through and it'll show all of those. Now that I've done that, I'm going to add 2 more labels. One of these I'm going to make the group name. And the other one I'm going to make the department just for demonstration purposes. And let me do some quick formatting here. I'll make these aligned left just to make it look a little nicer, or aligned right, sorry. And that's under advanced settings. Same with size and font weight and all that stuff. Anytime you want to change the settings for how it looks, you're going to find a lot of that in the advanced. Except for color, that's actually in properties. And I'm going to make this a little smaller so that I'm not accidentally clicking on it all the time. Now for the record, I want that to be more visible because that's the title of it. I'll also make that a little bigger. I'm going to pull these out just a little. Now I'm able to see these records a little easier and I can see some information about them all at one glance. But you can also see it's kind of confusing to distinguish between these records. So something that is really common that you see in these galleries is if you go in and add a rectangle and just make it really thin, you can make a separating line. And that allows you to view it a little easier. And you can do anything with that. Sometimes I like to take this and put it at the top and put a title in here, so it's got a nice little title block. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll just keep it nice and simple and put that down here. And once I do that, I'm going to begin my filtering and adding the controls for my filtering. So I'm going to put a place to put those controls. So I'm going to grab another rectangle and put it up here just so I can have a little nice looking area to put some buttons and changing the color of that. Now I can add a button, and I want 3 buttons for this, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this 2 more times. And I want this one to be a little smaller. I'm going to name this group A, that, and I'll name this one group B, and then I'm going to name this one all. And what I'm going to do with these buttons, if you haven't guessed, is I'm going to have this one show all the records, and then when you click this one, it's going to filter them and just show group A, and this one's just going to show group B. And if you select all of them, you can center them like that. It's a nice, easy way to get it formatted. I'm also going to make them all a little taller. There we go. Now, these buttons don't do anything yet. There is data there, but these have nothing in their functions. So I want this button to make it filter by group A. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to make a variable, which is a little bit of code, but it's very low code. So it'll be set, and I'm going to call it filter by because it's what I'm going to be filtering by. And I'm going to call that just group A, just a text value called group A, because that's what the column is in SharePoint. It's a text column, and that is the group. Oops. And then I'm going to do the same for group B. And for the all one, I'm actually going to do the same thing, but I'm not going to put anything in there, just so that I have some sort of value for this variable that I can do this based off of. So then for this, I have my data here, and what I want to do is filter this data. So there's a filter command in PowerApps, and that lets you basically just put a data source right here, and then next to that data source, you put some sort of test to determine whether or not that data should be shown. And something you can put in here is the columns for that data. So I'm going to take my group name column, which is the one that I'm filtering off of, and I'm going to say if it's equal to the filter by variable that I'm setting, then it's going to be shown. So now it's only going to be the filter by variable. I haven't set the variable yet, so nothing's going to be shown. But if I go in and click on here, it's going to show everything in group A and nothing else. Same with group B. But if I click all, it's not going to show anything because that variable isn't equal to anything, so it's saying anything with no group name. So I do need to fix that also. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. So this is going to be if there is a value for our variable. But if there's not, I just want it to show all the records. So the easiest way to do that is just to say if our variable is equal to nothing, then it'll be everything. So this is saying items are equal to everything if it's nothing. Otherwise, it's equal to the filtering that we just did. And if I do that, then it should show all of these, and it will show everything in here. And something that's kind of finicky about PowerApps is sometimes you have to refresh the data. I actually do have more groups than just A and B. And if I go in and refresh those, it should show them. There we go, I have A, B, C, D. And something I'll do to make this grouping a little easier on the eyes is I have a code that I already have written. It's a lot more simple than it looks, but it's just a code to change the color. Basically, it's a switch statement, which if you don't know what that is, it's just saying you have a value, and if that value is equal to a thing, do this, and you can just do that as many times as you want. So now I just have it so that based on the group, it'll have a different color, and that makes it easier to see this. That's just for demonstration purposes. If you want to see that code later on, feel free to ask for that in the questions and answers section, and I might paste it in the chat. But yeah, you can see that these buttons work fine for grouping and everything. It's great. One problem you would run into with this app is when you start the app, there's still no value for this filter by variable. So that's something to keep track of is if you do have variables in your app, what are they going to start out as? So I'm going to go to the on start or on visible. It doesn't really make much difference for this one right now. So I'm going to go to on start and I'm going to say whenever the application starts, it's just going to set the filter variable to nothing, which in here we have saying that it's just going to have everything in there. And that's about it. It's just a nice, simple way to filter your data. It might be a little confusing to filter things sometimes, so I wanted to just kind of show a simple, easy example for how you can filter your data and change things based off of what you're filtering and use user input to change the filtering in that data. One more thing I wanted to mention before I begin the next segment of this is something to keep in mind if you are going to be filtering data. If you try to do things that are more complex than this, sometimes you might try to filter by the creator of the data's email or something. There are certain things that SharePoint can't do, but like when it gives the data to PowerApps, so PowerApps can only do it in itself, which means that only a certain amount of records can be affected by that filter. So you might not see everything if you're filtering, and it'll give you a warning when that happens. But there's certain ways you can program this to avoid that. And that is something that is a little bit more on the advanced side, but if that is something that anyone wants to know any more about, I actually have a link to what options can and can't be delegated to SharePoint and prevent errors like that, because that is a pretty big error when you try to go into more advanced filtering. So other than that, that's how to make a simple filtering app. And now I'm going to go ahead and show some of our expense reporting features. So here is our expense reporting desktop app. I used a lot of the filtering in this, especially with this type of stuff. For these reports, it filters by the status, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So in this app, there's a couple options here. You can submit your own expenses, and you select the approver in here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this user. Oh, okay, they must not have an email on this tenant. And then in here, I can just enter a couple things. So I can say the description is hotel stay, and that expense type would be the hotel. Maybe it's $80. And if I wanted to add a photo or receipt for that, maybe I bought it online, I can add an image in there from here and then upload that, and that'll upload in there. And when I do that, it will show in here. You can preview it. It's a pretty handy way to get receipts on there. And on the mobile version, you can actually snap a photo, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But once I do that, I can add the expense. I can add as many of those expenses as I want, and I can go in here and look at this. I've also had it so that you can just delete and edit straight from in here. And once you've got all your expenses squared away, you can submit them for approval. And what that's going to do is that person that I put for approval, that's going to send them an email. And in their email, they're going to get a link to the app. And it's going to tell them that they need to approve your expense. And that'll be under your approval section. So you'll be able to see in here, if someone submitted an expense to you, you can review and approve those. And you can deny it. You can request that they resubmit it. You can approve it, or you can approve all of the expenses in our report. It's nice and simple. It'll show you the total, all of that stuff. But for that expense that I just submitted, what do I do as the person who submitted to check the status of that? Well, I can go in here under my expenses, and that's going to be pending approval. And there's the report that I just submitted. And I don't have any receipts there, but There's also other things I can see. I can see which ones I have that are approved, what need to be resubmitted. I don't need to resubmit anything right now. I can look at which ones have already been paid to me so that I can check and make sure that what has been paid has been paid. Or I can just view everything total and take a look in there. And when I do that, it will show me the color based on which status it has. So if it's pending approval, it'll be this nice teal color. Another fun feature that's specific to the desktop app is there's a payment portal. And this is for people who want to fulfill the expense payments. When they go in and actually pay these expenses, they go into this app and they mark them as paid. And they can do that for any expenses that are pending approval or already approved. And this makes it really easy for them to filter. They can search by which user submitted, which user is approving, what the status of it is, and what the amount is. So if I want to search for all paid expenses that are greater than $20, I can just do this. And that's all of these. And then I can go in here and take a look at the data for that. If I want to go into expenses that are pending approval, I can actually do the same thing, and I can actually approve it from in here or mark it as paid from in here also. And then in the approved section, it'll just be mark as paid. So this is a really handy way for the department to actually fulfill the expenses and tell everyone that the expenses have been fulfilled. That way, they don't have to go in and modify all of that in SharePoint on their own. And this is only going to be visible to people with specific permissions. Same with the settings button. These are both configurable so that you can add whoever you want in there. For settings, it's just a simple, it'll be app settings like if you go into add an expense and it's driving, there is a miles option. And what that does is you put how many miles you've driven and it'll automatically calculate that based off of the rate per mile that you have set in the app. And by default, it's set to whatever the standard is in the US, I believe. But yeah, so this is the desktop expense reporting app. Got a nice amount of functionality in it. And when the users are on the go, they also have the option of this mobile app. It has a lot of the same features in it. So I can go in and do a lot of this same stuff. When I add a photo, it's going to just be the camera itself. This is just behind my desk, but I can tap on the screen and I can upload that photo and it will add it to whatever expense I'm currently working on. And once it loads, it'll show up in here. Loading a little slow today, but I can view the image and I can delete it and do whatever I need to do with those images and submit that, view it in here. I can view the same data that I just submitted. If I go in here, I'll see that hotel expense that I just put in. I can also approve. And there's settings in here too. So yeah, it's a really handy tool. I'm happy with how it turned out, and I'm happy to see how much functionality people get out of it. And I'm excited. But yeah, so with all that done, and with that filtering app shown, I guess I'll turn it over to questions. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat.
Brandon, I believe there's a question over in the chat about searching for past expenses, your own past expenses.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So your past expenses, those are going to show up under my expenses. This whole my expenses section is the expenses that you yourself have submitted. So you would search that based on what the status of that expense is. So if you want to see if it's still in pending approval, then you would check in there. And if it's not in there, then it's going to be in one of these sections. And you'll be able to see it based off of that. And this should show, yeah, all of your past expenses. I can go back and see all of these reports. And it's grouped by report, so if I go into each report, it will show me the expenses in that report. You do have to scroll because of some certain limitations with PowerApps. If you try to search, it won't show you all of the data every time. But yeah. Any other questions? Filtering based on status. You can't filter your own expenses that way, but that's something that's more for actually you for the type of expense you can't really filter on that, no. But you can filter on status and who submitted it and amount in here, and then everything else is already showing you like what the user themselves is supposed to see. So if you're the approver, you're going to see what you need to approve, and if you're the submitter, you're going to see what you've submitted and what and so you're going to see what you submitted and what you need to approve. But the idea is that the admin users would also have access to this payment portal, and they would be able to search in there too. An approver and a separate payer. Yeah, so basically for the payment portal, the people who pay can approve it, but they don't have to. When you submit an expense, it goes to the approver, and the main idea is that the approver will approve the expense, and after that, in the payment portal, they can just look under paid or under approved, and they'll be able to pay it from there. So they wouldn't even have to worry about that. There's an option for them to approve it if they want to, but that is something that could easily be like turned off on a basis of deployment. So like if we gave that to a customer, we could just turn that off in their app so that they wouldn't be able to approve it if they wanted it that way. So that you could have it just be that specific approver. But basically the way the permissions work is the expense gets submitted to an approver and that approver approves it. And then it goes to the payer after that, or the payer can see it in the portal. But the payer can also see it in the portal before it's approved too and approve it if they need to. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. No problem. Any other questions?
All right, if there are no other further questions, Brandon and I will stick around just for a couple more minutes. And we just want to thank you guys again for joining. If you guys think of any questions, please feel free to shoot me over an email or go onto our website and go to the contact and shoot us an email there, give us a call. I'll be contacting you guys within the next couple days. This video has been recorded, so you guys can take a look at it again. I'll be sending over the video to you. Thanks again, guys. Hope you guys have a great evening.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
All right. That's everyone.
Right.
Cool.